Most people are really clear on what they don't want. And what we don't, and resolving what we don't want doesn't lead us to what we want. It just might remove some of the painful things and annoyances, but it doesn't necessarily create this life that we love. My whole world is like, how do we create a life that we don't want to retire from? Do I value it? And could I see myself doing this 10 years down the road, 20 years down the road, 30 years down the road? Or is it something that I would be exhausted because it's sacrifice? And when we aren't choosing our lives, we sacrifice. Oh, I sacrificed for you, now you owe me something. Well, that's a shit place for anyone to be. Without the proper models of like frameworks of how to build wealth, and without the proper philosophies and the team, people end up working hard and then finding out that there was tons of financial leaks, financial mistakes, and just a lack of knowledge. Even if they have a financial planner, most financial planners are focused on building their retirement, not building their cash flow today. What is money really? Like, that book's really about our relationship to money is merely a reflection of our relationship to ourselves. And until we understand what money is and have it in its proper place, that ultimately it will tell us a story that leaves us in dissonance and frustration.
Hey everybody, it's Regan Archibald and welcome to Unreasonable Health. Today we're going to have some fun. I've got a repeat guest on the show who's a great friend and just a phenomenal deep thinker. I think he's a real gift for modern day society, especially those of you who have ever struggled with finances and looking for better context around it. And also if you're somebody who loves a good laugh, Garrett Gunderson, somebody who has had me brought to my knees in tears, and I've seen him clear people off their chairs at medical events who, typically they're stuffy events, and Garrett's come in and just brought in some real magic. He's the author of several amazing books, including Killing Sacred Cows, and his newest one, Money Unmasked, which we're going to talk about today. But Garrett, welcome back to the show.
Hey, it's good to be back. Why isn't there a peptide to make our beard stay dark? I don't understand.
I'm working on that. I know. I think, my wife says it's distinguished. We can always color it, but yeah, yours is looking pretty solid today.
Well, it's like my hair going gray, I feel is distinguished. My beard going gray makes me feel old.
Well, you are. I mean, let's just face it. Like, it's
according to my kids, I'm ancient, it's amazing. I'm like, it's going to happen before they know it that they're this age.
Isn't it funny when your dad was 45, because Garrett and I are 45, same age. And when your dad was 45, did you think he was old as balls?
I mean, not as old as my kids think, but it definitely seemed like a far off, like never going to happen to me age for sure.
Yeah. The best thing that my dad did when he turned 50, because he went gray when he was like 18. I think I don't know why. And, but he dyed his hair brown because he never dyed his hair, and he was like white when he was the age of 50, and his hair turned purple. So he looked kind of like Ronald McDonald's cousin for about a month. It was hilarious.
I shaved my head in high school for like, we did as a baseball team. And when my hair started growing in, my scalp looked blue for like a few days. Yeah.
Yeah. The fun things we do. And so you've had quite the whirlwind. I mean, the last couple of years you've been, you went on tour, you wrote new books. What has been your biggest learning experience over the last couple of years?
Man, it's been a crazy couple of years because like from November of 2020 to April of 2021, it was like my favorite 5 months of my life because I was preparing for doing a comedy special with like, full-fledged, like at this place, the Depot, which is got a balcony and like just a killer venue. And we had 8 cameras and all these people from Hollywood that were, directing it and producing it. So that was like crazy exciting. And then I went from that to being like going to 16 different cities, or I might've been 17. I think I said 15 initially, and then booked a few extra to do comedy, which was a pain in the ass, like filling venues of cities that I don't even, like I'd sold my business, didn't have a database. So awesome to be on stage, crushing my sleep and my health, packing the venues though, trying to sell them out for these $47 tickets. So it's like the least amount of money I've made in a decade to do the hardest work just to have an hour of fun on stage. So I learned pretty quickly, like, hey, if I don't design the game that I want to play, someone else will design one for me, and it might not necessarily be what I want, even though it might have had ingredients that I love. And so that's really confusing when there's ingredients of what seems to be everything that I want, checkered with some things that I don't want, and the things that I didn't want actually started to destroy the things that I love most around that topic of, comedy. And like, I didn't just want to be another 40-year-old white comic. I think we have a few of those out there in the world. I was like, I wanted to use entertainment to educate. I want to like plant a few seeds where people could see money just a little bit differently, but we learn more when we laugh. We retain more when we laugh. And everybody wants to be entertained. Not everybody wants to be educated. So like that was the big lesson for me was like, I wrote Money Unmasked. And when I write a book, I typically write something philosophically, then experience it quickly after physically, like go through and have this like level of compassion for anyone that's dealing with certain things, or to like really test out the strategies. And so the big thing for me was I really, in that book, put my whole heart and soul into it, and then went through this experience of like, I was stuck playing not to lose and playing to win. Two different things I talk about in the book. Where was I playing not to lose? I had this firm that was kind of on autopilot, that I'm just making money every month. I'm not having to do a whole lot for, but I'm not alive in that firm. It doesn't even represent who I am anymore. And so like, here I'm writing about playing not to lose being a form of scarcity. I'm like, yeah, but this is a lot of money coming in every month. And I chose to sell that because it didn't represent who I was anymore. That was extraordinarily painful and difficult. And then I had this like playing to win notion, which was starting up a new business using entertainment to educate, and in a partnership that wasn't necessarily like enjoyable for me. So I did in the same year, separating from both those businesses completely so I could like design the life that I want and live it the way that I want. And that's hard when there's high stakes of like making those choices, and when there's relationships and when there's emotions. Like all these ideas are great on paper, but try to apply it with the emotional, aspect of living, and with people, and with them wanting something, or them wanting to control me, or them wanting me to be something that I'm not. That was a hell of a mess that I had to get through.
Man, well, I mean, disrupted sleep, which you and I were just talking about, constant, internal battles about what to say and what's right, what's wrong, how to separate things up. And I think a lot of our listeners have been through that. And I think for you, the greatest thing I saw is the philosophy, the framework that you teach is actually one that you live. Because how many people do you know that's written a book, and then you meet them in person, or you get to know them, and you're like, your book, you're full of shit. Like you don't do anything that's in your book. Like it'd be like me not taking peptides, right? It'd be like, hey, go get your peptides, guys. And I really want you to work on your health, but I'm eating Cheetos, and you find me at McDonald's, lounging in there, and it'd just be ridiculous. But you did it. So maybe you could give people the framework in which you made it through the last couple of years and have actually created the life that you want.
Look, part of it is we have to have some way to consider what we really want. Most people are really clear on what they don't want. And what we don't, and resolving what we don't want doesn't lead us to what we want. It just might remove some of the painful things and annoyances, but it doesn't necessarily create this life that we love. And my whole world is like, how do we create a life that we don't want to retire from? So part of getting there was like listening to my inner knowing, which I got that from having hobbies, like going and shooting my bow all the time. It's quiet. I'm up at my cabin. There's nobody around. It's like a great way to get insight. Like yesterday, I meditated for a very long time, 2 hours. Get so much insight when it's just quiet. Now, it's not quiet the whole time because my mind's trying to convince me that I'm doing nothing. I should get up, and but eventually, like these insights come. And just being in nature for me too, like walking my river, like it's my river, walking the river next to my cabin where you've been, where we do these immersions. Like,
so nice.
Like just having that time where the TV's not on, having that time where I'm not talking to someone, just time to kind of think. That was kind of the first phase. Then the second thing is I like to take an assessment and say, what I call the road to don't. What are all the ingredients and lessons I've had over my lifetime, especially the last 20 years, that led me to a place where maybe I was profitable from a financial standpoint, but not fully enjoy from a everyday life. And so that road to don't, I started to identify what no longer represents the person I want to be, the person I'm going to be, and the calendar that I'm going to keep. And so I would just look at my calendar and say, what is it that I did that I didn't love doing, that either drained my energy, was neutral, or didn't really fill me up? Because there are other people that like doing those things, or maybe that just doesn't represent who I'm going to be in the world. And so then I just started looking at what are the things I love doing? I love to write. I love to perform. I wrote a theatrical keynote, doing comedy. I really love to rehearse and to work on that so I can refine it, and I can have coaches and mentors that help me from an acting standpoint or from a movement on stage standpoint. And then I love to connect with really great relationships. I just invited you and several other people up to my cabin, and we just hung out on a Saturday because I like the way you guys think. It's a lot of fun. And so that's really, so I start thinking about how do I design my life in a way that it feels more like play and less like work, but it's a way that allows me to be a value creator. So how am I the greatest value creator? And I really start to consider and assess that. How do I add the most value? How do I serve the most people? How do I most deeply impact the people I'm serving? And so that came down to a lot of getting clear about how do I really feel the impact of what I'm doing? So that's why I like having you at an immersion, is I get to watch that and I get to be a co-creator with you in developing that, where back in the day when I was doing some of my webinars, there might be hundreds of people on, but all I see is names and I'm just speaking to a screen, and it felt like nothingness. So that was, so I figure out what doesn't belong anymore. And then where do I create the rhythms and habits that call forth the things that I want to do on a regular basis? So when I mentioned rehearsing, well, what if I had a rehearsal Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday? So that's now part of time and space in my calendar. Writing a blog. I don't know if you've read many of my blogs, but they're long as hell because... Oh,
they're great. Yeah, they are long.
Right. So I like to write those in the morning. So Tuesday mornings and Wednesday mornings early, and sometimes on Thursdays and on flights, I'm working on that writing and I'm calling that forward into my life. Right. Yeah. So now I've got writing now, and then I'm like, okay, I like to connect deeply, like I said, with relationships. So on Fridays, I'm looking to do an immersion with someone. Did one last Friday, did one the Friday before, did one the Friday before. Normally I like to do 2 a month so I can be really present and connected and see those outcomes. So I start to really build my calendar, like even this morning, having coffee with my wife. We have great conversations over coffee in the morning. Okay, like taking a walk in the evening. So you gotta, it's not just the space for what we do in business, it's the space for what we want our life to be. And what most people put off till one day, someday, if they call it forward now, which might be shorter trips. Just got back from New York where we were there with our kids, and we're having conversations with them saying, hey, wouldn't it be awesome even when you're married if we did this every couple of years, just the 4 of us, go do some things that are really fun, get to catch up, get to hang out. I remember I saw you in Amsterdam, and I had just, I had taken my mom, my dad, and my 2 sisters on this trip. And we went through Amsterdam to get to Italy, but it was just the 4 of us. And again, that's something I want to do along the way, not when I'm 20 years from now or 30 years from now for the first time. And so if we start giving ourselves permission to have time off, to have some play, to have some enjoyment, and then find enjoyment in the work that we do, because when I lived in Italy for 63 days with my family one summer, I was ready to come back and work. I was excited about the work that I was doing. That's a good indicator that we've designed life the proper way. And I know a lot of people are like, oh, well, it's easy for some people to do it. I'm a coal miner's son. I came from Price, Utah, where there's 12,000 people, a rural community. I didn't grow up in New York City. I wasn't handed a bunch of money through an inheritance. It was a work ethic that I was handed. It was love from my family. But really, most people only design life based upon the limitations within their mind. And then they're frustrated with other people that live a great life and want to switch places rather than do the work it takes for themselves. And so that's a lot of the process. I know it's a kind of a long answer, but it's a consistent refinement. I mean, it's a consistent refinement. What are we going to do? What are we not going to do? How do we want to live? What do we love? What do we not love quite as much? And how do we continue to, spend time with the people we love, doing the things that we love, and delegating the things that we don't to people who are sick enough to love the things that we hate.
Which is crazy. There's plenty of jobs to go around. There's 8 billion humans, and we're all different. So the interesting thing is, you started yours with getting centered. When you start mapping out your framework, is number one, you go shoot your bow. By the way, have you read Zen Bow, Zen Arrow?
No.
Awa Kenso. I already plugged a message to Chelsea, so it's a gift on the way. So yeah, it's a phenomenal book because it's a Zen master, and he talks about the way you shoot the arrow is how it's a reflection of what's going on internally. So it's a cool book. It's a short one, so I think you'll love it.
So I could probably read it. Is there pictures in it?
Well, I can actually interpret it for you, Garrett. I'll read it to you next time we're together. Yeah, no, you're gonna love it. And then the other thing you do is you called it the road to don'ts,
Yeah.
and maybe you could unpack that just a little bit, because it's an interesting concept.
Sometimes I would find myself frustrated when I would make what I would consider mistakes. And like you said, what are my biggest lessons? Well, one of my biggest lessons of all time is not speaking up in the moment I know to say something, hoping that things will be different in the future. So it's like governing by hope instead of accountability. It's, not wanting to be like, if I think of like, if what it really was is like growing up and be like, I want to be a good boy. And sometimes being a good boy means you keep your mouth shut and you suffer and you sacrifice and you take on the pain rather than actually have a conversation that could make a difference. And so that's what happened in my old business, is it started growing away that wasn't what I wanted, but I didn't speak up. I just want to be a team player, but that's not being a leader and saying, no, that's not really where I want to go and what I want to do. And, I let that kind of happen in order to not have drama, in order to people please, in order to, but it ended up being something that wasn't good for anyone because I didn't speak up. And speaking up can be really inconvenient. And sometimes it could lead to a bit of an argument. It could lead to something that could feel heated in the moment. But sometimes that's what's required to get the results that we want in this life. And if we just don't speak up or create a framework, then we start living someone else's rules. We start living someone else's life. We start appeasing and pleasing. We start sacrificing, and we hope that one day it will be better, but we become that sacrifice. And most of the world thinks sacrifice is this great thing. And if it means to make something sacred, I would agree. But if it means to do something that's lesser than who you are in the name of appeasing someone else, that's the crux of what leaves us in a bad road in society. And I feel like that's a mistake I made. So instead of being like, oh, I can't believe I made this mistake, I don't have confidence in who I am anymore, it was saying, well, this was an ingredient that no longer belonged. I can learn the lesson and harvest that lesson. And that was the road to don't. There's many paths in our life. And sometimes we take these detours, and those detours teach us great lessons, huge insights that without that detour, nobody else telling us would work, because we had to go through that experience in order to, in my world, I look at it as almost like solve the karmas, to process and heal that situation, or to have a deeper knowing and understanding, which cultivates a lot of content. And so the road to don't is being like, yeah, that's not what I wanted. I didn't want to go be a club comic. That didn't move the needle for me. It was a moment on stage that felt amazing. And when that was over, nobody's life was really that different because of it, including mine, other than I wasn't doing the thing that I was most gifted in and that I wanted to do at the highest level. So it's Regan, what it really comes down to more than anything is most people don't have a good model of how they operate their lives or their business or their health. And what they have is ideas and insights without that system or model. And so it requires a huge amount of effort because there isn't an efficiency without that model. And so sometimes in the road to don't, it's like, oh, this isn't what I want to do, even though it's effective to a certain degree, even though other people might value it. Do I value it? And could I see myself doing this 10 years down the road, 20 years down the road, 30 years down the road? Or is it something that I would be exhausted because it's sacrifice? And when we aren't choosing our lives, we sacrifice. But when it's a choice, it's not sacrifice anymore, it's a choice. And that's a nuance that most people understand, because most people wear it as a badge when they sacrifice. But sacrifice is a judgment against someone else too. Like, oh, I sacrificed for you, now you owe me something. Well, that's a shit place for anyone to be.
Right. Yeah. Well, and it's interesting because what you did in your road to don't is you recognize, hey, I want to go down this path. I want to be I'm going to go and tour 17 cities or whatever the total amount was. And then you recognized it early enough where you made the pivot because how many people get stuck in a place that they don't want to be? And sometimes it's not just confronting other people, because when you confront other people, when you speak up, there's trust that's built from that. That's what I found is every time I've done that, even if things don't work out and maybe financially it's very costly and relationships change, I don't have to confront myself every day and say, when are you going to have that conversation? It's like death by a thousand cuts, right? Where it's just like you're bleeding out. But the cool thing about what you did is you made the pivot at the right time. And I've been a benefactor of Garrett's transition. Well, not that kind of transition. He's still man, but just had to throw that in there because I know you got the long hair and a lot of people are wondering, but the beard is definitely masculine.
Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. We'll keep that
I
on the.
transitioned into comedy because
Oh yeah, excuse me. I
identified as
forgot what we were
hilarious.
talking
Okay,
about.
I identified as hilarious.
Yes, Garrett's been telling jokes his whole life, so he's always been a bit of a comedian. But the cool thing that you did is you started doing immersions, and I remember you were speaking at Justin Donald's mastermind, and at the end you're talking about like the immersions, and I was like, wait, what is this? Was that Justin Donald's or was it a Go Wellness event? I don't remember which one you were speaking at.
Yeah, I was at both, but I think the time that you said I want to do that was when I was at a Go Wellness event and just kind of mentioned it when people are asking the questions at the end because I did my theatrical keynote.
Yes, yeah, and if you've never seen Garrett's his keynote as one man show, it's amazing, and we'll dive into some of the nuances there. But the immersion experience, the great thing you did is you opened yourself up, and it's a different level of energy when you invite someone one on one to come spend time with you. And in my case, it was Cade and I. And we said, hey, we want to put on some really amazing retreats. And one of the things Garrett did for me about 6 years ago is I went to one of his retreats or one of his workshops on finances. And luckily, my wife was there because she put all the things into action immediately, and it's just set us up for such a great financial future. And we're in such a better place now because of the work that you did then. And so when I learned about this immersion, I was like, this is interesting because it's I guess, how would you describe the immersion? I looked at it as a way of me getting clear on what I wanted to do as far as my next step. So I avoid the road to don'ts and by getting clear. So it's almost like the Zen bow, Zen arrow moment. And then the immersions where we actually did the work that needed to be done so we could have the framework and the processes and systems. So it wasn't an enormous amount of energy to make the changes. Is that pretty accurate?
What I found is when I can go one-on-one, when I could be one-on-one with someone, that we could go so much further, so much faster. And part of it is I'm bringing people to my favorite place on the planet, this lodge that I have on the Provo River. And so they're coming into like my sacred space, right? This is where I do tons of writing, and this is where we bring our family for our traditions and retreats and stuff like that. And I was like, yeah, when I first started, we didn't have that. It was in a conference room. And it was the only reason I did it the first time was because we had people that were outliers that my firm at the time couldn't really help, but I could. And so I'd just say, oh, we'll do a day. And we'd spend a day and we'd kind of roll up our sleeves and figure out, were there any, opportunities they hadn't capitalized on, any obstacles they hadn't identified? What was their subconscious beliefs around money? Where could we assemble and build a financial team to help them get much better results in a much shorter period of time? And what is it that they want to design with their life so that they had this quality of life along the way? And then once it happened at the cabin, what was great was, well, now I get like this whole afternoon with someone to really get to know them and like what's important to them. So the next day when we really dive in, it's amazing the results we can get because we're dealing with what are the 5 main objectives by the end of this that they could get done? And we suspend kind of like, if you didn't have any constraint with money, time, or ability, what would you do in life? Like, what are the most important whats that you want to do and the why you would want to do those if we took away the how and the when? If the how and the when we could figure out before the end of the day, because I open up my Rolodex and we'll find those connections for you, What do we want to go? And so, some of it's getting the financial house in order or dialed in. We save a boatload of tax for people typically in that situation. You'd already worked with us in the past, so that we didn't really have to focus that much with you and Kate on that. And then it's really like, what thing would help you in a one-to-many fashion to create a lot more leverage and impact with what you already have. So it's like looking at the ingredients of the individual and the business and finding out where, and for you guys, it was like, hey, you guys are hosting these wellness retreats. And I used to host, these wealth acceleration workshops. And it's like, let's build out a system that makes it so much more efficient and effective so that, you're able to get a whole lot more patients and you'll be able to get a whole lot better results and then build out those relationships. So, sometimes it's the 5 and 5, like what are the 5 things you want to do less of, the 5 things you want to do more of. Maybe it's the 4 I's to efficiency. What are the 4 places your money's leaking the most? Or do you plug those leaks, build a financial team to kind of get there? But what I love most about it is, if I'm vulnerable enough that other people that when they show up can be really vulnerable, then we get to this place of trust. And when we're at a place of trust in a safe space like that, where there's high confidentiality, people start sharing with me things they don't share with other people. And what happens is in our money story, there's what we will share, which is like what people kind of keep at bay, and this is their story, and this is how they want it to be perceived. There's what they won't share, which is this internal dialogue that's typically holding them back from peace of mind, financial abundance and clarity, and even confidence. And if I can get them to get to that point, we can start to unwind and kind of unravel and kind of remove those blocks. And then we get to the best place, which is the places that people can't share, their blind spots, the things that they didn't even recognize that might have happened when they were kids that have been holding them back, but they couldn't identify it. But because we're in this safe space, we have that trust, we have that vulnerability, then we get to this place of intimacy. And that intimacy is where I can really see them in a very profound way and ask them questions they haven't asked themselves so they get the answers from within. And that's where the breakthrough exists. So yeah, we're helping them save money, we're helping them grow their business, we're helping them, get clear about what they want and improve their quality of life. But most importantly, we're helping them identify the things that sabotage their abundance and prosperity that they could never identify because it's so close to them. Like, I can't even identify that in my own self. I have outside people looking at me and asking me questions because it's paradoxical that something happens in our life, we hide it from ourselves. But anything that starts to feel like it threatens that, we move into preservation and protection, which is a form of scarcity. That even though it might avoid poverty for us because we become more productive, it also robs us of being present and having this joy and this fulfillment. And there's some people that are making so much money, but it never feels like enough. There's some people that they're always looking at other people like, why are they better off than I am? But they're not, but they just can't see it. It's all this unrest. And so that's where the magic happens. Even though before that, we're saving tax, we're organizing the financial house, we're getting, the right connections. It's that afternoon where it's like a little bit more leeway just to be and just to explore. That's so much fun.
Yeah. Well, and there's there's great food, awesome conversations, there's music, and then nature. You're right. I mean, it's just a little piece of heaven out there. And out by the UN.
There's a lot of jokes and laughing.
I feel bad for Trisha. I mean, she had to hear just.
Trisha's cooking and Trisha's taking notes and curating the experience. And we're just like me, you, and Cade, 3 teenagers at that point.
It was a teen fest. But
we're trying to blur the lines between work and play, right? So that even though we're getting something profound accomplished, we're doing it in a way that is enjoyable and fun and isn't just about getting to the other side of it. The experience itself has value.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, exactly. Like, even if it wasn't productive, it would have still been well worthwhile, but it was very productive. And we had a hell of a time doing it. And so that's why I'm doing it again. I think, is it July? I can't remember the date, but anyway, we're doing it again, June or July.
Yeah, and it's interesting. When I first did these, it wasn't even like an option for people to do it again, but we had someone in our business just interview people, do these exit interviews and say, like, what did you like? What can we improve? Like, and the big thing, people are like, well, what's next? And so the one thing is we did this little test, and it wasn't a little test, but we did a test where I'm like, all right, we're going to take 12 people that have done immersions, and we're going to invite them to be part of this group where it's called Ascension, which has some of that follow through and follow up of we've had such big results from that because I get it. I'm so connected to the people in it. I mean, I'm communicating, like we have each other's cell phone. Like I feel like I've made friends. Like I'm really invested in their life. And so we've done some of that. But then I just did my first second immersion where at the beginning of the year, and it went so what the second one was, I couldn't believe how deep we got and how much was like all this stuff was uncovered. I was like, all right, yeah. So I told the other people in Ascension, hey, I'm going to do second immersions for the people that want it. And like a few people raised their hand, including you guys, said, hey, we're in. So I'm really excited about that because I like being part of someone's path and journey and watch their results and you know, it's just the more time I'm around you, the easier it is for me to think of like who I should be referring to you and who needs to be connected. And I'm constantly telling people about you guys, your services, and you know who you are. And like you've made a big difference in my health. I mean, I called you with terrible blood pressure. I was like, dude, this is ridiculous. My blood pressure is so high. You're like, we should definitely solve that. So we've made major progress, 20-point drop since I've been working with you, and now I'm in phase 2 of that work. I mean, before I'd always been getting acupuncture, and you know I'd done some genetic stuff, and I'd done stem cells, and I'd done you know IV bags, but like now I'm in the peptide world with you. So
yeah, Garrett's fully immersed in the East-West side too, which is fun.
yeah.
But the great thing is, yes, you have an awesome network of like-minded people, and so many of the people you've introduced me to, they're like, "Oh, I'm so glad Garrett introduced us." So it's like a value add there,
Yeah.
and the other value add is like just the clarity that I received from the immersion, and I could go back and take the work to the team. And it's something where actually the what and the how, I didn't have to do the what and the how. I just had to say, okay, here's how. It wasn't more time. It was just doing things differently. And it's made a huge difference.
Well, I'm glad, man. It was a lot of fun doing it. And, you know, I don't think I've talked about immersions publicly like this. I mean, I don't think I've been on a podcast talking about immersions. I only do 24 a year, you know, and that's what I cap it out at. But it's like because my main criteria is like, could I make a huge difference for this person? I gotta have a lot of fun working with them. You know, that's the main criteria for it. And it has been kind of this gift and this like I did an immersion last month where we got in the river, so it's snow everywhere, and we did like one guy's like, I want to do a cold plunge in the river. Dude, the river cold plunge definitely harder than a normal cold plunge when that water's flowing that way, and then you have to walk back to the cabin. But like, it's just fun that each one's unique, different, get to know a lot of nuances of people. So I really enjoy it.
Yeah, that's great. And kind of your new thing is your multipliers. And I think that's just going to be amazing. I mean, and maybe you could talk about those a little bit. And then I do want to circle back and just touch on your new book, because I think your Money Unmasked book, I learned a lot from that, a lot about my own psychology around money, because I think we all those 4 kind of archetypes you have in there, we all can identify with those behaviors and that thinking. But let's talk about the multipliers real quick, and then let's jump into the book.
Yeah, so I haven't even officially launched Multiplier yet, but basically the thought process has been for the last couple of years, I've been going, how do I really help people get financial results? Like, how do I, in a big way? And in the past, like, I know that it'll evolve where we're going to use a lot more technology and AI to support it so that it's more relevant and timely for everybody. So, you know, there's certain things with this concept of investor DNA that I wrote about in Killing Sacred Cows that most people don't need to know 80% of what they feel they don't know enough about and feel guilty for not knowing it when it comes to finance. Everyone, it's important for them to have models and philosophy and kind of their, like, know their investor DNA so they know what to pay attention and what not to pay attention to. Because I don't know anything about options trading because I don't like it. I don't know hardly anything about the stock market anymore because it's not my investor DNA. Like, what I want to know about is intellectual property. That's my main thing with investor DNA. Business and how to operate business. That's another part of my investor DNA. And so I don't need to know about tax liens. I don't need to know about, you know, I don't know, derivatives. There's so many financial instruments, you know, commercial real estate. There's all this stuff that I don't even have to care about because I focus on the things that are aligned with my investor DNA, and I only invest where it grows myself and my human life value Otherwise, I consider it speculation. If I invest in something I know nothing about, I'm speculating. And most people are speculating even when they invest in an ETF or a mutual fund. They know nothing about why it will pay off, when it will pay off, how it will pay off, what the fees are, what volatility they should expect, how to create cash flow from it. So part of the thing is, without the proper models of like frameworks of how to build wealth, and without the proper philosophies and the team, people end up working hard and then finding out that there was tons of financial leaks, financial mistakes, and just a lack of knowledge. Even if they have a financial planner, most financial planners are focused on building their retirement, not building their cash flow today.
Right.
Most entrepreneurs complain they don't have a good tax team. I mean, there's all these problems that I've seen over a quarter of a century of being in finance. And so I was like, I've got to build a framework that helps people, A, have permission to make more money, which is invest in yourself. And there's 3 main ways to do it. B, keep more of what you make, which there's 4 main areas where you can keep way more money, 10% or more of your income. Then third, learn how to grow your money aligned with your investor DNA, knowing there's 3 big asset classes and 2 big places to store that value. And then number 4, health and wealth, because genetic wealth is that we create the habits for our children and our children's children on how to be healthy in a world that's filled with vegetable oils and high fructose corn syrup and GMOs and overly emphasizing wheat and carbs and all that kind of stuff. And, so like health and wealth is the last part of that, but it's about having a weekly strategy session that supports those results. And so that's something that in Q3 of 2024, I will release and launch and make it very affordable, because it would begin with the cash recovery. Where could people plug their financial leaks? Giving them a full course on how they design a life that they love and improve their quality of life. So it's everything from it's something they could do on their own time, but then every week I'm bringing them models that they could then implement in their life, and then the connections for anything that needs to be implemented. So that's the multiplier that's coming out here pretty soon. I've just got a lot of framework building that I'm doing, and it's been a couple of years in the making, but we're less than 90 days away from the launch.
Jeez. Well, that's going to be exciting. So you guys heard it first here.
Yeah.
And by the way, it's fun if you ever walk with Garrett, if you go with Garrett in public or if you go in the airport, he's got fans everywhere. I feel kind of famous just by knowing you. So that's really the only reason I had you on the podcast. Just I want to feel a little famous today. So,
dude, and I'm fickle. I like it, dude. Like, it's so funny. I was with my buddy Ian Stanley. We've done it. We did a comedy tour together. We have a podcast called Funny Money that we're launching, and we went to see Jordan Peterson. He came to Salt Lake, and I was like, I'm not running ads anymore, so I don't get recognized that often. 6 times that night. I was like, that was the most ever in one. And he's like, dude, what do you mean? I'm like, hey man. And people are sweet. They're like, hey, I did a book report on your book in college, or hey, I've been watching your videos and I like this. Can I get a picture? I'm like, absolutely. Like, I love it. My wife, maybe not as big of a fan of it, but I like the attention, man. I'm not going to lie. I like to see that my work matters. I like to see that I'm not just here in my office writing, but those words actually impact someone's life. So, my wife, when she's with me and we were traveling with one of our friends, she's like, just so you know, Garrett's going to talk to random strangers. They're just going to approach him. And I was like, it's not going to happen. It did. And then I'm like, I feel validated and good about myself. I'm not above it.
No, I think it's great. It's cool. Garrett took me, he was kind enough to take me to the Steve Aoki concert. And the fans are coming up in the middle of the concert, like, "Are you Garrett? I love your books." It was awesome. And we went backstage, and Steve Aoki and Garrett are friends. I'm like, of course, this dude knows everybody.
Yeah, that was fun, man. Like my friend, one of our friends got caked, which is he throws cakes at the end of the show, and he's deadly accurate. Like we were on side stage, so we avoided the whole cake disaster in our way. That was fun. It was a fun
That was
night.
really cool.
Yeah, there was some dude that yelled out my name because we were VIP, so I thought he was yelling because of Steve, but he knew me from the other work, and it had its advantage. We used the privilege to go right to the front of the line and get in early. Now, you were late, so you didn't get to experience that, but that's fine.
I did miss that part, unfortunately. I was trying to park my big old truck. Man, well, let's talk about your book, because I think a good starting place, if this is your first time being exposed to Garrett, and if you really want to look at your financial life and just like creating the life that you want in our society today, you need to have resources. I mean, it just makes life better if you have the resources. And Garrett's, out of everybody I've ever met, Garrett's helped me create the resources that I need so I can live a life of abundance. And so let's talk about your book, Money Unmasked, and what could people expect to get out of that? Maybe we could talk a little bit about some of your favorite parts of the book.
I like the first line of the book is, what would you do with $1 billion? Like that just is so confronting right out the gate. Because I use $1 billion because if someone thinks they can spend $1 billion, that's pretty amazing. It gets us to think, like, how can we be more productive? How can we have a bigger vision? And then it's really understanding these shadow sides of these money personas, so we know what leads us to mistakes and missteps and limitation, versus our winning sides of the persona, which is how we best utilize our gifts and talents, understanding our money kind of thought processes and behaviors. And it's a lot of hidden factors that determine our success or failure when it comes to money. And then from there, we're going into everything from how do you profit from your ideas up front without having to borrow money, or how do you recover cash and put more money in your pocket, or what is money really? Like, that book's really about our relationship to money is merely a reflection of our relationship to ourselves. And until we understand what money is and have it in its proper place, that ultimately it will tell us a story that leaves us in dissonance and frustration. So to me, that book in the end is really about love in the very final chapter, but it's not so airy-fairy that people should check out and be like, oh, it's just another hippie with his long hair talking about, peace, love, and happiness. No, what I'm talking about is, like, we are so confused around money in society. And because we're confused about it, it wrecks and runs our life in ways that aren't very helpful. And when we understand it in its proper place and how we operate with it, we make better choices and decisions and can love our life along the way, versus wait for retirement and be disappointed because we sacrifice far too much and it's too hefty of a price. And we become our habits, and the habits that most people have around scrimping, saving, sacrificing, delaying, and deferring, which doesn't lead to wealth. So wealth is a byproduct of a life well lived. So if you want to design life at a different level, I think that book is really useful.
Yeah, that was well said. And I think what people do is that those years of sacrifice, then when they do retire, they drive their spouse crazy because they put the same kind of pressure on their spouse. The new game is like, let's take the same scarcity mentality into the home now, because you can't do it at work. So I think, no matter what stage of life, whether you're 18, just getting started, 15, curious about money, or you're 80-year-old and you want to live the next 10, 20 years, in a new way, then grab the book, Money Unmasked. You won't be disappointed. And Garrett, this has been a phenomenal conversation as always. And I think once you launch your new multipliers, of course, I'll be one of your first clients, but I think there's some real benefits that people have as well. So make sure, let me know, and then we'll get it out to our
and
audience.
The good news is you already are a first client of Multiplier, because everybody in Ascension gets Multiplier as a bonus, no additional cost to it. So since you're in the Ascension group, yeah.
See, I told you Garrett's not all about money. I mean, he's that's awesome. Well, thanks so much. Any final words you want to leave with the audience, or places where people can go to connect with you?
Yeah, if you go to garrettgunderson.com/blog, you can look up the Road to Don't. I wrote a lengthy blog on that concept that we spent a few minutes on. If you go to garrettgunderson.com/discovery, you're going to find one or two things there. Either you get to talk to my team and understand if an immersion's right for you, or what other programs we might have that could support you, or there still might be a $1,000 program up there where I do your session. I'm not sure where the website's going to be at the point someone watches this, but you'll see when you go to garrettgunderson.com/discovery. And then if my books are for sale on the site when you go there, I would buy the books from my site, because I have really a lot more ability to deliver value when someone buys it from me versus Amazon. And I think you'll be pleasantly surprised of what we're going to do for people that buy the book from. And I've got multiple books: Killing Sacred Cows, Disrupting Sacred Cows, What Would the Rockefellers Do, and the one we talked about, Money Unmasked. And then I have a children's book, I Am Money. So that's the one that Regan read all the way through, cover to cover, right in front of me. So
the only book I've ever read all the way through was Garrett's children's book. Thank you for writing that for me, Garrett. I appreciate it.
It's great. It's good to see what you're doing with the knowledge from there too.
It's amazing how much money I've made from that children's book. Awesome. Well, thanks so much, Garrett, and appreciate everyone watching the show. Share this with your friends, family, loved ones, and we will see you next time.